When I say the future is more expensive than it used to be, I'm really saying simply that interest rates are lower than they used to be. In order to illustrate this point, I'd like to refer to this table I put together showing how much money an individual would need to set aside in order to accumulate to $1,000 in 10, 20, or 30 years of time. And this table shows how much you need to put away depending on the interest rate that is prevailing. And it's pretty clear from this chart that the lower the interest rates, the more expensive the future is. Particularly pronounced at the 30-year period, where we see the difference between a 12% interest rate and a 2% interest rate is an increase in the cost of the future of something like 17 times. So this is just a straightforward axiomatic result of what interest rates mean for the future. The reason this I've used this historical chart is it really describes the story of what I've seen in the last 40 years. If we go back to 1985, interest rates actually were 12%. And so the landscape of the future and putting money away for the future, well, it looked downright cheap. I could put away for $33. I could buy $1,000 30 years in the future. Since that time, what we've seen is interest rates have moved pretty remorselessly lower. So that in the 1990s, they were down in the 8% range. In the 2000s, they were down around 6%. By the 2010s, they were all the way down to 4%. And then by the middle and second half of 2020, we saw rates bottoming out at all-time lows around 2%. What this means in terms of the cost of the future is startling. This was the reality that we were looking at in 2020. We wrote a series of articles on retirement, really pointing out how this was going to drive higher cost of retirement. Obviously, when we say the future is getting more expensive, one corollary of that is retirement's going to get more expensive. Since then, rates have recovered to some extent and are back now around 5%. So a little bit of the pressure is off, but we're still living in a world of much lower interest rates than what prevailed for most of my adult life. And that's shorthand explanation for why the future is more expensive than it used to be. And again, as we say, that means in our business that retirement is more expensive. So what does that mean for an employer, right? Well, at the very least, if you're a defined benefit sponsor, if you are a sponsor of a pension plan, you're aware of this phenomenon because you saw how as interest rates moved down over the last 40 years, you ended up paying more for the retirement benefits you promised than you had originally anticipated. So that's some lived experience. But even without a defined benefit plan, this is an issue for retirement generally, which means it's an issue for your employees at the very least. Some employers are likely already seeing this manifest in terms of retention, maybe employee performance, inability to retire, and that those sort of issues create broader workforce management issues for employers that maybe are coming to a head.